Hello, welcome to another video of Code Snippet. So this is basically the continuation of last video where we are looking into Spring Boot caching. So in the last video, we have learned everything about Spring Boot caching, but there is one major problem, right? What exactly is that? That our cache was in memory, right? And there was a big problem when it comes to cache being inside your memory of your application. Now in this video, we are going to move away from in-memory cache and make use of something called as Redis, which is basically an external cache. We are going to connect Redis to our application and we are going to actually store that particular cache inside Redis. So how that can be done? It's very easy. So let's get started without wasting any time. This is going to be a fun video. So sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Right, so let's first go through the agenda of this particular video. So let me bring up the agenda. So very simple agenda over here, right? So Spring Boot caching with Redis, right? So first we will have a quick glance at what exactly is Redis, and after that we will connect Redis to Spring Boot application. And this Redis setup is very easy that we are going to look into this video, by the way, because I am going to make use of Docker in order to install Redis. So no lengthy and long WSL setup and nothing, right? So let's just recap what we have seen in the last video. So we have seen what exactly is caching. We have seen cache inside Spring Boot. We have seen two types of caching, in-memory cache and distributed cache, right? And we have seen multiple annotations as and when we implemented caching, right? This is the important concept that we are going to talk about. So until now, we have seen in-memory cache, which was a cache created inside a memory of your application or server. Spring Boot uses concurrent hash map in order to store cache data inside that particular in-memory cache, right? But it has a problem that we have seen in the last video, right? So if you have multiple nodes, then each node will have its own cache, right? And that will create a problem, right? Because if any one of the node updates anything inside DB, then the internal cache of that node will be updated, but the internal cache of other nodes will still have older data, which will create a problem. And these two nodes will keep returning the stale data, right? So that is a problem. So how we solve it? We solve it by using a distributed cache so that all the nodes can connect to single cache server, right? And this cache is basically out of all these three nodes, right? So that is what we are going to implement, and this is basically Redis that we are talking about over here, right? So that is basically distributed caching, and that is something which we are going to look into this video. So let's get started and let's see what exactly is Redis. So let's see what exactly is Redis, right? So if you go to Google and type Redis, then it will divert you to the official website, right? So you can go over here and look into Redis, right? So if you go to products, Redis have multiple products, right? And the famous thing over here is basically caching, right? So if you go over here, you will have details about the Redis cache, right? So Redis is basically in-memory data store used by millions of developers as a cache, right? Or vector database or document database, blah lot of things, lot of usages basically, right? Now when they are saying that Redis is an in-memory data store, this means that Redis can store data on RAM, your random access memory, making it much faster, right? Instead of storing data on your disk, it will store data at RAM and it will make it way more faster, right? Now this in-memory data store is not similar to what we have seen over here in memory data, right? It is basically a distributed Redis which you can run on other server apart from your application server, right? So that all nodes can connect to this particular one server which is running your Redis, right? Now you can follow all these steps and try installing Redis on your machine, and it may be a time consuming process for you, but let me show you a easiest way. What you can do, you can run Redis stack on Docker directly, right? So you can just hit couple of commands over here related to Redis cache and it will just start Redis for you, right? Very easy, right? So that is something which we are going to see. So let's come back over here. So that is basically Redis. So let's jump to code and let's see how we can implement Redis over here, right? So here is basically the same code that we have seen in the last video. So here we have weather controller and we have CRUD APIs over here. Apart from that, we have this repository, which is basically JPA repository. After that, we have this weather service where we have implemented all our caching mechanisms. So we have used cacheable, we have used cache put, we have used cache evict, right? So all these details I have explained in detail in the last video. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend you go and watch that first so that you will have clear understanding of this one, right? Now let's go back over here. So here, if you see, we are giving all the configuration, right? So here what we need to do is we need to mention which Redis we want, right? If we do not mention anything, then this guy, our Spring will connect to in-memory cache and will store details in concurrent hash map, right? So that's what it was doing, and that is the implementation that we have seen in the last video, right? In order to connect to Redis, first we need to run Redis inside our application, right? So what we can do over here, so you can go to terminal, any terminal, and you can hit this command, right? So this is basically the command. So what docker run will do, docker run will just run the image, right? After that, -d is basically a flag, which means detach mode means things will run in the background, right? So it will run the image in the background. After that, we will have the name. So what is the name of the container that you want to give? So I want to give Redis cache as the name of the container. After that, we have a -p, that means the port of your container. So we want to run Redis at 6379, the official port of Redis server. After that, we have Redis, right? So the Redis is basically from where I want to pull the image. Basically, it will pull the image from Docker Hub and run it for us, right? So let's try to hit it and let's see what happens. So if I hit that, it is saying Docker cannot connect to Docker daemon, right? So it needs something to run this particular image, right? It needs a Docker engine in order to run this particular image, right? So what you need to do is you need to install Docker desktop, right? So what you can do, you can just go to Docker desktop over here, Docker desktop, and you will be able to download it from here. So if you scroll down over here, you will have download Docker desktop. So from here you can download based on the operating system you are using and directly install it on your machine, right? That is basically simple stuff that you can do. After that, once you install it, so you need to open it. So let me just open it quickly. So it should open. So this guy is now open. So it is basically the UI of your Docker desktop, right? So once you open this Docker desktop, it will basically start Docker engine for you, right? And which will help you to run any container you want, right? So now you want to run this particular container. So what you can do, you can hit this command again and it will start the container. So if you go back to your Docker desktop, there is this container running Redis cache. If I go inside it, it is ready to accept the connections, right? That means our cache guy is basically running. How we can check that? You can check that by using Redis CLI, right? So there is something called as Redis CLI, which will help us to perform few command. So it's kind of a command line interface for Redis, right? So here what you can do, you can try to ping it. So you should get something called as pong. That means this guy is running, right? Again, if you do not have Redis CLI, you can just install it. If you are using Mac, just say brew install Redis CLI and it will do the job for you. If you're using Windows, just download the CLI and run the executable file, right? You will be fine, right? So that is basically the Redis CLI. Now let's come back to our Spring Boot application since we have already started our Redis. So we only did a couple of things. First, you need a Docker desktop. Second, you need Docker CLI and you can directly hit this particular command to run Redis inside your machine, right? So after that, we need to tell Spring Boot to make use of Redis now, right? So you need some configuration like this. So you need to tell Spring to make use of cache type, which is Redis, right? After that, you will say which Redis you want to use. So now we have installed this guy at localhost. So we will give localhost. After that, we will give this particular port, that is 6379. After that, we will give the name of the cache, right? The cache name, if you remember, we have created a name as cache. So when we say cacheable, we have this weather cache and we will pass the key of the entries that we are going to store inside the cache, right? Now what I can do, I can try to run this particular application. Let's see what happens. Now it is failing, right? It is failing because it's not able to create the cache manager. So if you go over here, then you have this cache manager over here, right? Which is basically responsible for managing your cache. So now we have given this particular guy that we want to use Redis. This particular guy is crying because it's not able to get the cache, right? The cache to manage, right? Last time we did not have this configuration, so it was working just fine because it is just creating the in-memory cache for us and working fine. But now what we need to do is we need to go to pom.xml and we need to add a dependency. So this is basically the dependency that we need to add. Spring Boot starter data Redis. Once you do that, and let's just reload our Maven, you can just reload it from here. Once you do that and try to bring up your application, it should just come up fine, right? So it is basically deployed, as you can see over here, started weather service application, right? Now let's try to add some data inside our application. So let me just bring up my Postman. So there we go. Let me just find it. So there should be a post request. So we will pass again Manali, we will pass, right? Here we have added the data, right? Now what you can do over here, Let's go back to terminal and let me just expand this. Let me just clear it out. Now what you can do, you can make use of Redis CLI to get the data, right? So get is basically the command which you can make use of to get the data. So you need to pass some arguments to it. If you hit it without any argument, this guy will cry that it needs some argument, right? What it needs a cache name. So we have weather as our cache, right? If I hit this, then you will get nil. That means there is nothing inside this cache. And you can also pass the key, right? So you can pass the name of the key that is stored inside this particular cache. What is the key that we want to store? So here is basically the city name, that is Manali. So if you go over here inside service, there is our service, weather service. So if you see over here, the key is basically the name of the city that we are passing. So if you pass Manali over here, you will still get nil. Why we are getting nil and why there is no data inside our cache? Because we did not hit any get API yet, right? So what you need to do first, you need to hit a get API so that it will hit the database, pull the data, and then cache the stuff inside cache so that your next request executes quickly and get the data from cache, right? So now this should add details inside the cache. And if I hit this particular command again, then if you can see over here, we have this particular cloudy 15 stored inside this particular cache. That means our Redis is working, right? So Redis is basically storing this particular data. Let's try to store a couple of more data over here. So what I will do, I will go back over here and store Mumbai. Let's say Mumbai is sunny and 35 degrees and send it, right? So this should add the data. Now let's go back over here and let's try to get Mumbai now. There we go. If I hit it, it should store details inside our cache. And if I try to get Mumbai now, then we are getting sunny 35, right? So that is something which we are getting. And let's try to just get everything from weather. Let's try to add one more perhaps. So let's say we add Pune over here, right? Pune, and let's say Pune is sunny but 25 degrees Celsius. You send it, it will add the data. Let's try to get it. Once you try to get it, it should add it inside cache. And now what you can do, again, you can do Redis CLI, or what you can do, you can just say Redis CLI and hit enter and you will be able to log in inside Redis CLI. So this is basically the CLI, and here you can directly hit the commands, right? So here you can do, so get command, you can hit get and your cache name, weather, and basically this time we will get for Pune, right? Oh, it's coming as nil. Why it is coming as nil? Because we are getting the data for Mumbai, not Pune. So now this should add it, and let's try to get it again. So we are getting the data now, right? Now you can also get all the data inside cache by using keys star, I believe. So that should give you all the data. So if you see over here, you have all the cache data stored over here, right? And if you perform different operations now, let's say you want to update the data of Pune, right? So let's go over here. Let's update to 22 degrees Celsius and update for Pune, right? So if I hit this now, and now if you check the cache, let's try to get the keys now. So this will just give you the keys. And if you just try to get the value of this key, so just paste it and you will see that it is updated to 22 degrees Celsius, right? Now if you delete it, again same thing will happen. Let's delete for Manali, and if you see over here, let's try to get keys. So if you will see that Manali is basically deleted. Now what we can do, let's try to run this application inside debug mode. So let's see what happens. So let it come up. So it is started. Let's try to add weather again. So Pune we have added. Let's try to get it once. So it is inside debug mode. Let it go through. Now we will inspect the cache, right? So let's see what is there inside inspect cache. So if you remember, we have created this cache data API in order to inspect the cache, right? Let's move and let's see. So here, if you see now, the cache object is a object of Redis cache, right? So this is basically the abstract implementation for us, which is provided by Spring Boot, right? We have added this particular dependency, right? So we have added this Redis dependency, which is handling everything for us. The Spring Boot starter data JPA dependency, right? So this guy handles everything for us, right? Let's go back over here. And if you see over here now, let's see what we have inside the cache object. So here inside cache object, here is the name of the cache. So here basically we have details about the cache. If you see, we have the name of the cache, which is basically weather, right? And you can also perform different operations on the cache. So if I open evaluate expression, then what I can do over here, cache dot get any object. So let's say we pass a key over here. So what we added now, Pune, right? Let me just try to evaluate. So we are getting the value, right? So sunny 22 degree, right? We can also get the name of the cache. So if you evaluate this, you will get the name of the cache as weather, right? That is basically the cache it is connecting to, right? And it's a Redis cache, and the cache manager in this case is basically Redis cache manager, right? Redis cache manager is basically abstract for us, right? It is handling all the stuff for us. So that is basically how you can simply connect your application to Redis cache, right? And you can perform the operations seamlessly and store all the data inside Redis cache seamlessly and solve the bigger problem of having in-memory cache on each server, right? So let's go back over here, and we have seen what exactly is Redis, and we have also seen how we can connect to Redis by using our Spring Boot application, right? So that is basically simple implementation. So that's it in this video. If you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to Code Snippet. Share this video with your friends so that they are also aware of how to connect your Spring Boot application to Redis. That's it in this video. See you in the next video.